Hello everyone, in this video I'll be showing you the most OP dual crossbow build in Baldur's Gate 3. Dual crossbows is actually extremely powerful and there's a lot of gear that complements it, which we'll be breaking down all in this video. So I would recommend, honestly, the best class for this is going to be the Sword Bard because they get the ability to use Slashing Flourish, and per one attack action they can attack 2 targets. So with your 2 attacks per action, that's 4 targets that you can hit, and you can hit the same target 4 times. As far as cantrip goes, I really like to have mage hands because they can throw water bottles, or you can have them throw healing potions for your team. Vicious Mockery, really great cantrip, and with certain gear we can bonus action cast this. If you're the face of the party, take Friends instead of the Vicious Mockery cantrip there. And as for our spells, I would recommend grabbing yourself at least the Healing Word spell and getting some type of movement speed boost. If there's no one else in your team that has Long Strider, you should take it. Thunderwave is a good choice to go with, and Dissonant Whispers as well because you can frighten a target. So Fairy Fire being another good choice. Now our ability score spread, we're going to be mostly built around dexterity with some constitution and charisma. Charisma is going to be for our spell casting, which we aren't going to do a lot of. However, we can actually do some pretty enhanced spell casting, which I'll show you in this video. So 16 charisma, 10 wisdom and intelligence, 14 constitution, and 16 dexterity. You can swap your constitution and charisma scores if you prefer having more health and less spell casting and face rolls. And at level 2, we get our Jack of all trades, adding half the proficiency bonus to things we're not proficient in, and Song of Rest for that extra short rest. We'll then use our level 2 spell to take Fairy Fire or Tasha's Hideous Laughter, your preference there. We're mostly going to be doing melee attacks here until we get a few different spells, but as mentioned again, we're going to go with the Sword Bard here because this gives you, not only, I guess, the defensive flourish is nice too, getting your armor class boosted by 4 can be pretty useful for survivability. You can also teleport with the mobile flourish. But mostly Slashing Flourish, allowing us to attack a target twice is what we want. It's really crazy, the potential damage. Now for the fighting style, it's actually kind of tricky, but we're going to want to have 2 weapon fighting. This will boost up our offhand crossbow attacks, and if we use a dagger, you can get a boost to that as well. Now for our level 2 spell, or level 3 spell, we want to grab Hold Person. The reason why is we can use Hold Person on a target, and if we use an arrow of many targets, and Hold Person makes automatic critical hits on your melee attacks or your weapon attacks from 3 meters range, you can actually shoot an arrow of many targets, and it works weirdly where if you crit the first person, everybody else will get hit with critical hit damage. So this can be a really good boost to our overall offensiveness, and it's great to support your other teammates as well. But once we hit level 4, this is going to be potentially the only feat that we get for this, depending on how we want to build around it. I would recommend grabbing Minor Illusion, but again, if you're the face of the party, Friends is right there. Now for our level 2 spell that we'll also go with here, I mean, Cloud of Daggers is nice because it's guaranteed damage and you can kind of kite people into a specific area to run to. Invisibility is also quite nice, just, I mean, it's turning invisible, so obviously it's quite useful. It's your choice. Crown of Madness even has some abilities here that's pretty useful. This can also be cast as a bonus action, so it actually kind of fits well here. Now for our feat, I would recommend, I mean, an ability score improvement on dexterity is nice, but if we want to maximize damage, we got to take Sharpshooter. We can also get the archery fighting style to help offset that -5 penalty. You can toggle it off if you're going to have a very low hit chance, but this adds additional 10 damage. This 10 damage also applies to arrow of many targets, and our extra, the fact that we can attack 2 targets at once. So we definitely need Sharpshooter. Crossbow Expert is another one that I really like. If you're going to take 2 feats, this allows you to do attacks at melee range with your crossbows. However, we got another way that we could set up advantage, which I'll get to in the gear section. Level 5 gives us our Font of Inspiration, so we get our Bardic Inspiration back on short rest, and the bonuses are up to a 1d8. This is going to be mostly used on our Slashing Flourish ranged. Now, level 3 gives us Fear, which can make targets drop their weapons, and we can pick them up. Glyph of Warding, which is actually pretty useful because you can put enemies asleep using this, and if you're a half-elf, you can also cast it at your feet because it won't affect yourself. And then we also got Plant Growth for non-concentration crowd control. I like to have Glyph of Warding. It's almost like a mini fireball that you can use. It's pretty good damage overall. Next up, level 6. This is when we get our very powerful extra attacks. Now we can do Slashing Flourish twice in the same target, Slashing Flourish twice in the same target, and it's likely going to delete them because it's like 40 plus damage from Sharpshooter, obviously with the damage from our bow as well. Very high damage. Now for our last spell that we'll take from the Bard here, Plant Growth or Fear are great, because Fear again makes targets drop their weapons. My personal preference is Fear, although Plant Growth can play nice as well. Once we hit level 7, this is where we got 2 different ways that we can go about building. I personally like to add in the Rogue Thief for that extra bonus action attack. That's just great because the bonus action is super useful. However, we can also add in the Fighter. We want the Fighter, I prefer taking the Fighter a little bit sooner. Gives you martial weapon training, medium armor, shields, all that jazz. Defense is nice, but we need to offset that archery fighting style, so +2 to range weapon attacks, which also is, again, boosted by our 2 weapon fighting. works well. Level 2 for action surge, obviously this is extremely powerful and a good one to have. And then here's where we got the choice, because we can actually add in the Arcane Archer now that patch 8 is out. I'm going to show you a couple different ways to take this. Now, we also have the option of going with like the Ranger and taking the Gloom Stalker, because they'll give you an extra attack on turn 1 of combat that does an additional 1d8 of damage, and you get +3 to your initiative and movement speed. So a multi-class with the Gloom Stalker does make quite a bit of sense. However, we can also add again in the Rogue. Even the Barbarian allows you to get some tankiness, but the Rogue, it gives us some sneak attacks. It also gives us the bonus action abilities here, so we can dash and use our attacks in the same turn. But most notably, you could, I guess, Arcane Trickster kind of gives you spellcasting here, but the Thief is such a big boost because hand crossbows benefit from being able to use your hand offhand attacks, and this will further boost them up because Sharpshooter's also adding to it. Some people like the Assassin. If you've played this game many times, you know how to take advantage of the Assassin, use it. If you're going to do combat pass like round 2, the Thief's better for that extra bonus action. Is more sustained damage at +10. That's basically like your 1d6 plus your ability modifier plus 10 damage every single turn versus the sneak attack boost from the Assassin. It's your choice here. I think the Thief makes more sense if you're using a heavy crossbow than the Assassin makes more sense. And now we got one last choice here. So this is for our final level. We can go with the Sharpshooter, we have the Sharpshooter fee. We can go with the Crossbow Expert because this will allow us to do crossbow attacks at close range, which is further boosted up by the Ballast Armor. However, we can also make attack rolls with advantage if we use Darkness, which I'll get to in the combat. So you could go with this. This sets us up this way. Now, if we're going to stack Arcane Acuity, I actually think the Arcane Archer is better. This does use intelligence, especially for the banishing shot, but you're going to land these if you use the Helmet of Arcane Acuity to get the +10 to spell save DC. You will land these pretty frequently. It's really good. I don't like the piercing shot too much. I find that it's just not that high damage compared to some of the other choices here, but it's good to take like the Seeking Arrow and the Shadow Arrow, which can blind targets. Banish obviously being the most powerful. This just ends up being really good because you can take an enemy out of combat for 2 turns. That is really good. In the action economy, again, most combat's going to last under 5 turns, so reducing their ability to damage your team is really good. This also gives us guidance too, which is nice. But again, you could also even take the Battle Master for riposte. It gives you a bit of weaponizing your reaction. But I think that the Eldritch Knight or the Arcane Archer mixed in here is my personal preference. But again, if you want that feat, take the Rogue. You got 3 different options, I guess, here. I just want to provide some different choices for people that like different things. Now, the outfit I'm wearing is the Astitia robe here, as the mod is released this week, so I want to highlight it here. So to put this all together, the Helmet of Arcane Acuity, as mentioned, if you use an arrow of many targets, you can get a +10 to your spell save DC, which enables us to use our arcane shots without worry. The nice thing is, though, we only get 4 of these, but they replenish on short rest, much like our Bardic Inspiration, so we actually have 2 resources here that actually work together very well. Now, I also think that you could use the Warped Headband of Intellect here if you're in Act 1 for utilizing the Arcane Archer if you'd want. Now for cloaks, there's only a few in the game, but Deathstalker Mantle is by far the best if you're the Dark Urge. Otherwise, use the Cloak Protection. The Ballast Armor is also by far the best outfit in the game because piercing damage is doubled. This means that our Hellfire Hand Crossbow's 1d6 is essentially a 1d6 times 2. And this is even crazier when we can attack the target twice, and that's 2 attacks per action. So that's 1d6 times 2 times 2 times 2. It becomes pretty crazy pretty quickly. And on top of all that, there's +10 damage from the Sharpshooter feat, and that 10 damage is turned to 20 damage. So that's, yeah, I don't want to keep saying it. There's a lot of damage. On top of this, I also like the Helldust Gloves because this will boost our spell save DC, but also give us 1d6 of fire damage on our attacks. This is great because we can attack multiple targets at a time. Dark Justiciar Gauntlets are great as well. You could also go with something like the Gloves of Dexterity and dump your Dexterity if you're in Act 1, or use the Wondrous Gloves to give yourself additional Bardic Inspiration and an additional armor class. So the Wondrous Gloves is probably the true best, but I'm going to use the Helldust Gloves just to show off the massive damage boost. And the Boots of Stormy Clamor if you got the Lifted Ability Drain, because then you can stack Reverberation really quickly. Otherwise, the Disintegrating Night Rockers, Helldusk Boots, or the Evasive Shoes would be the best choices. I also have Knife the Undermountain King in the main hand here. This will increase our critical hit chance, which is great. But also, if we're in darkness, we also get advantage on attack rolls, which is pretty nice too. Lately Obscured, so any type of shade will actually boost up our attack roll chance. And then on top of that, I also like the Shadow Cloak Ring because this will allow you to do additional damage. And what's great is this also applies to our range attacks, so an additional 1d4 damage. I have the Ring of Protection here, but there's one ring that stands above the rest. Now, there's one thing I mentioned earlier, Darkness. This is how we're able to do attacks at close range to get the Ballast Armor to apply and also it makes the Knife of the Mountain King apply to our ranged weapons as well. We need to get Darkness Vision somehow. There's 3 items in the game that can grant this. There is the Steel Watcher helmet. However, this is, I think the Helmet of Arcane Acuity is much higher priority there. We can also go with the Sharp Spear of the Night. So if you grab that spear, or Sharp Spear of the Evening, it gives you immunity to blindness. That's also tough because we want to use this weapon here. But if you got, and you have to be evil to get it. If you're not evil, your only option is the Eversight Ring, which gives immunity to blindness, which is really good. And you want to have this stacked up with Arrows of Darkness, because when you got an Arrow of Darkness, you can use this to basically hide out in it, and it gives you all that extra damage. And yeah, it becomes pretty crazy. So I'll show you what this looks like when we get into actual combat. I guess I should mention Hellfire hand crossbows. Whenever you're hiding or invisible, you can inflict burning, which will then, if the target's burning, they take double damage from the, or additional 1d4 piercing from the Fire Stoker. So that can actually boost up our damage a nice bit as well. Also, the Nair Mister is great, but that is pure force damage, which is good. Don't get me wrong, force damage is nice, but it doesn't double our damage from the Ballast Armor. So we want to maximize damage. And I should also mention the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel actually allows us to cast our powerful spells like Fear and Crown of Madness and Hold Person as a bonus action. So you can get up the Shadow Cloaked Ring if you prefer to use the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. I think that's actually a really good choice too. The boost to damage is nice, but this is a crowd control spell for free. If you have no one else using it, someone should. Alright, to show off the pure chaos of this build, the first thing we do is set up our defensive bubble. If you have a Beastmaster Ranger, they can set up it with their Ravens. There's lots of ways to set up darkness. You want to have some way to do it. And we rolled a free crit here, so boom. We rolled a 20, it didn't crit for whatever reason. Now we can attack and get advantage on our attack. So what we want to do is then apply and go ahead here with the Arrow of Many Targets, because whenever we have one of these here, for some odd reason we have a low hit chance, we'll attack this target here. Now what's great is we're going to get a bunch of extra damage riders that apply onto this. I guess we'll roll the crit to show off, because you can crit multiple enemies at a time with this. So that's 2 enemies down, 1 enemy at half health, 1 enemy at above half health. Pretty good. We're now invisible too, so this is even further going to boost up our damage. Again, probably the best choice is the Arrow of Many Targets, unless there's a certain enemy that... You can see there, we got advantage on this one from the Shadow Blade. But we want to be using this as much as possible, because the Sharpshooter damage boost is pretty nice. So yeah, that took out 3 more targets in one foul swoop. And then we have targets over there. Now we got a couple options. So we got our Arrow of Arcane Acuity, or our Arcane Acuity is now plus 26. So our fighter spell save DC, it doesn't show it there, but now we have a higher hit chance to land these. And what's also cool is we got Action Surge. So I want to take out these enemies down here, because they're just going to be a pain. I see one with counter spell, so we can banish them as well if you prefer. I don't have a great hit chance on that target, but we still land the shot, applied reverberation to multiple targets, and actually took one out. That's pretty good. You know what? We got a bonus action attack we can do as well. I'm going to leave these targets alone. I might actually go ahead with our bonus action spell that we got here. So Crown of Madness can be pretty cool, because we can cast this and then they're going to attack their teammates. So yeah, I'll do it with the bonus action, Crown of Madness. They saved on it, unfortunately. But the beautiful thing about this build is that doesn't matter. We can then go ahead here and, you know, I'm going to use Hold Person on both of these targets here. Typically, I can't run back there. They saved on it, but they got hit with reverberation. We got one target at least. The thing is, that takes away their turns, turns the action economy in our favor. But the reason I want to use Hold Person is because whenever you can apply Hold Person, you then get free crits off on them. I can't do that right now. I'm kind of in a bad position, but I'm going to use the Action Surge here to then go ahead with a Arrow of Darkness to give myself... I'm stuck here now. Disadvantage on the attack, well, that's fine. It was more than enough to get the shot to land. That's what we wanted. And then, I guess for our final action, I want to get rid of this target here. So we'll use the Banishing Shot and get rid of them, hopefully, and it missed, but applied reverberation. But you're going to see, they act weird when there's darkness. It breaks their line of sight. So whenever there's darkness around, they typically go with throwing attacks, and they jump around. So it's good, because it's going to be preventing the amount of damage that your team takes from a normal weapon attack. And it also breaks spell line of sight. So they're screwed. They have to run around to be able to cast things like Sacred Flame there. So that's really nice, because then we got a bit of safety for our team, but safety for us, because they just ignored us completely. And again, here, probably the best choice when there's multiple enemies is to use the Arrow of Many Targets. Yeah, because we can apply a reverberation to multiple enemies at a time. We're now invisible too, which is always fun. But what we can also do is we got some other shots, like the Shadow Arrow, which will automatically will blind a target, and it does extra psychic damage, which is great if you have someone with the Resonance Stone nearby. But we have 2 targets left. This is how powerful this build is with Action Surge. So we want to get rid of both of them. Ideally, we'd use a arrow of many targets at close range and have that crit around to multiple enemies, but we can't do that here. So what we'll do is, again, you guessed it, arrow of many targets for the extra damage. That was enough to take out that one, and then we can just go ahead with blasting them. They're gonna, yeah, they're gonna get hit regardless. So there it is. That is the most overpowered dual crossbow build in Baldur's Gate 3. What makes this very powerful, I didn't even get to showcase it because there's no opportunities where this would be most useful. But typically, if you want to save your arrows, you're going to want to use the slashing flourish here because you can attack a target twice. So boom, you can go ahead there, boom, boom, shoot them twice. It really does save your amount of arrows here because the damage is great. It uses Bardic Inspiration, which comes back on short rest. And then you have your Seeking Arrows too to destroy the enemies. So this is very powerful. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit the subscribe button below if you enjoyed, and we'll catch you all in the next video.